Vitamin B12 deficiency. It's one of the commonest health issues throughout the world, more so in India. 4 out of 10 people have low levels of vitamin B12. They might not even know about it. If it is left untreated, it can cause complications in the long term. Watch this video until the end to find out if you are at risk of low vitamin B12 and how to prevent and fix this problem. What is vitamin B12? It is one of the highly essential vitamins. It is a powerhouse for our body. It helps make DNA, the genetic material in our cells. It keeps our nerve cells and the blood cells healthy. It is highly important for a healthy brain and keeping our immune system in a good shape. Our body does not produce vitamin B12. It comes from the foods that we eat. When the food reaches the stomach acid or the gastric acid removes the B12 from the food that we have eaten. This removed B12 will now combine with a protein that our stomach lining produces, what we call as intrinsic factor. So the B12 and the intrinsic factor bind together, and this combined product of B12 now is transported all the way across the small intestine into this part, which is the last part of the small intestine, what we call as terminal ileum. Here, the vitamin B12 is taken up and absorbed into our body. Who is at risk of having vitamin B12 deficiency? Vitamin B12 mainly comes from animal products. Diet that includes red meat, chicken, fish, dairy products, eggs. So if your diet does not include any of this, then you might be at risk of low vitamin B12. If you're on medications in the long term, the ones suppressing the acid in the stomach, or the diabetic medication metformin, then that might be a risk factor for low B12. In older people, the stomach might not produce enough gastric acid and they can be at risk of having low levels of B12. If there is a problem in the lining of the stomach to do with our own immune system, and the stomach lining does not produce enough quantities of a protein called intrinsic factor, then one can develop low levels of vitamin B12. If you had an operation to remove part or whole of the stomach, you can run into low B12 levels. If you have a condition which causes malabsorption, what we call as celiac disease, which is allergy or intolerance to gluten, wheat products, then you might be at risk of having low levels of vitamin B12. If you have an unhealthy gut, that can result in low levels of vitamin B12. As I mentioned earlier, vitamin B12 is absorbed in this last part of the small intestine, what's called as terminal ileum. So any disease that affects this part of the small intestine can cause B12 deficiency. So the main one is inflammatory bowel disease, what we call as Crohn's disease, which can affect this part of the small intestine. Or if you had an operation to remove this part of the small intestine, that can result in low levels of vitamin B12. And finally, if you are drinking alcohol in excess and regularly, that can damage your digestive system and put you at risk of running low levels of vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 deficiency doesn't always give symptoms. You might have low levels and might not know about it. But if you're running low levels of vitamin B12 over a longer period of time, it can present with various symptoms. Physical symptoms such as feeling excessively tired, lack of interest or lack of energy in doing anything, reduced appetite, having to force yourself to eat. You can get also a sore mouth or a sore tongue, the tongue that looks all red and sometimes inflamed. Anything little bit spicy or anything that is sour becomes difficult to taste and swallow. You can lose weight because of significant loss of appetite. The skin color can change to looking pale or lemony yellow. There can be symptoms neurologically because it is affecting the brain and the nerves. Tingling and numbness in the hands and feet. It can affect the memory, concentration. You can forget things. It can affect the vision. The optic nerve, which is the nerve that goes into the back of our eyes, can get affected with having low levels of B12 and therefore can result in blurred vision. It can affect the balance, the way you can walk, where you can become a bit unsteady when you're walking, and also it can affect the way you can talk. Lastly, psychological symptoms mainly affecting our mood, our temper, not feeling yourself, feeling irritable and feeling depressed. So there are a variety of symptoms which can occur on its own or in combination if the B12 levels are running low for considerable time. How do you know you have low levels of vitamin B12? Because not everyone has symptoms. The simple thing to do is to have a blood test to check for vitamin B12 levels. If it is low, you can discuss with your doctor to see what's the best way to treat it, whether it's in the tablet form or an injection form. How can one prevent getting vitamin B12 deficiency in the first place? If you are a non-vegetarian, you have got plenty of sources where you can get the vitamin B12 from. Red meat, eggs, chicken, and fish. If you are a vegetarian, you can still get vitamin B12 from these sources: eggs, milk, curd, yogurt, paneer, cheese. If you are a vegan, someone who does not take any animal products or dairy products, then the options are unfortunately limited. You have to rely on foods that are already mixed with vitamin B12, fortified foods such as cereals and certain breads that are already pre-mixed with vitamin B12. You can sprinkle this nutritional yeast on salads and the foods that you eat. There are certain mushrooms like shiitake mushrooms that has reasonable source of vitamin B12. Some people say that taking fermented grains might also help. So the mainstay of prevention is trying to identify the sources of vitamin B12 that suits you. And in some people, unfortunately, no matter how much foods they consume that has got B12, they might not have adequate absorption and might need to have a replacement of B12, whether in the tablet or injection form, and the frequency of that will be decided by your doctor. Vitamin B12 is one of the important vitamins that our body needs to stay healthy. If you have low levels of vitamin B12 that is not treated, it can cause long-term complications. Most people can prevent vitamin B12 deficiency by taking foods that are rich in vitamin B12. If you have symptoms or if you have other associated digestive health issues, you should seek advice from a medical gastroenterologist. Thank you for listening.